And Palm Sunday is actually about engagement with society. So here you see a sort of stylized picture of Jesus on Palm Sunday. But society and culture is shaped by something. Culture is the way in which we tell stories. So if you watch, movies, if you watch something like Batman or Marvel or even most recently Black Panther. Black Panther is being lauded as one of the groundbreaking movies of our day. And the reason is not because it's Marvel and Disney throwing a boatload of money at a movie, which they often do anyways, but it's because it tells a particular story. It begins to change our culture. It changes our perspective of Black America, our African descent friends, not only in America, in the United States, but also in Africa. So I don't know, how many people have seen Black Panther? I'm just curious. Well, the story places Black men and women on an equal footing. So you have very powerful Black women in this story, and you also have a very, significant man who's leading in this story. And it's very different from the usual stories that are told about the Black community. Some of the difficult realities of being gangbangers or being rappers. It really begins to break the mold and create a new vision for young Black people around the world, even in Africa. I don't know if you read the news, but people in Africa were lining up to watch this movie. There were towns in major cities that maybe only had one theater showing Black Panther, and every show is sold out. Now, why is this? Because in Black culture in America, in the United States, and perhaps in Canada to a lesser degree, but also in Africa, there is a particular perspective of this entire group of people. And what Black Panther has done, it has told a positive story of power, of grace, of compassion, putting this group of people into a very positive light, granting them a vision for the future, informing them of who not only they might become, but who they are. The gospel is one of those stories as well. And it's a story that Christians carry throughout time. And the story of Christianity is simply that God created humanity and loves us. But we fell away from Him. We fell from grace because we wanted and chose to be apart from Him. And in doing so, we brought darkness into not only the world, but into our own hearts. And this has existed then in the story of Christian faith throughout time. Extended from, of course, the story of the Israelite people. And Christianity understands ourselves as the fulfillment of God's purposes since the fall of humanity. And so you begin to recognize that it is not just a simple story that's very small about Bethlehem or Jerusalem. It's not just about Vancouver or Canada. It's about the whole world, all of humanity, and it spans both time and geography. It is a massive story. The fact that you're actually making palm crosses today, the fact that we are actually celebrating Palm Sunday is something that is happening throughout the world today. There are hundreds of millions of Christians throughout the world, whether they do it by culture or conviction, they are participating in exactly what you are doing right now. There are people making palm crosses. There are people walking in the streets celebrating Palm Sunday, remembering. Stories give us meaning. Stories create culture. Stories influence society. Whoever you are now, you are shaped by your culture, by the stories you're told, and even the stories you tell yourself. It may have begun in your family. And I don't know if your family was a very loving one, in which they have positive reinforcement and encouraged you to love God or the value of your own personhood. Or if you came from a family that was troubled, more complex, where there are abuses, where there's grief and pain. The likelihood is that we have some blend of that in our families. That there isn't a perfect family, but there isn't really just a completely devastating family. But no matter what your story is, where on that spectrum you are, whether you're from a very difficult background or whatever story you've inherited, the question is, what story did you accept? What is the story you tell about yourself? When's the last time you wrote an autobiography? Or told someone about the story of your life? One of the exercises in our church that we did very early was have everyone go through something called a spiritual autobiography. To write one of those and to share it in community with small groups. And in doing so, we began to tell the story of ourselves. And I have to tell you, the reality is, your story about yourself will change the more you examine it. If you have never written an autobiography or explored your life, you need to do so. Because who you are is defined by the stories you tell about yourself and the stories you absorb from our culture, from our society. The Christian story has always been, from the beginning of time, a counter-cultural story. The problem that we then face is that oftentimes Christians do not tell the story. Or they begin to believe in other stories or mythos about themselves. Instead of countering the belief that there is no God with the idea that there is a God. Instead of countering the idea that there is no meaning to our lives, that it's absurd and we're an accident through evolution. I'm not saying evolution is necessarily wrong scientifically, but it supports a particular meaning. Instead of saying that our lives, countering that our lives, instead of being meaningless, have meaning and that we are loved, we begin to become silent. We stop creating the alternative. We stop preaching the gospel by the way that we live. We stop embodying by the things that we do, like making palm crosses and giving it to them as a simple act of faith. We say nothing. And by saying nothing, we cease to become Christian. John Stott, a great preacher, says this: probably the greatest tragedy of the church throughout its long and checkered history has been its constant tendency to conform to the prevailing culture instead of developing a Christian counterculture. And I would go as far as to say this, that there are certain forms of popular Christian culture that actually work against the gospel itself. And we need to be careful of that. There's Dr. James Houston, who said to me once in a very sort of shocking kind of statement, he said, the greatest threat to the Christian identity, and I would say the Christian story, is Christian culture itself. Now, when we begin to codify something and say everyone needs to act in a particular way without exploring it, without examining it, why do we believe what we believe? Why do we do what we do? When we stop asking those questions, we begin to deform. As John Stott says, we cease to be part of a counterculture, the counterculture of the gospel, and instead we succumb to being like everyone else. We lose the edge of the Christian faith. And so, my invitation to us during this season of telling the story, of making palm crosses, is how countercultural are you? It's actually another way of saying, how Christian are you? How Christian are you? And the reality is that very few of us begin as Christians. Even if we're from a Christian family, there is something in us in which we need to respond to God and His message of love. The fact that you're here in this church community, you are hearing things about love, about compassion, about goodness. And there's only, as we teach the children, there are 3 simple responses, and I've shared this with you before. If you have found the love of God compelling, if you have found this alternate way of living, an invitation to your soul, the response to it is what we teach children in 3 words. And I've said this before, but if you've never heard this before, consider it. And consider saying these words again, even if you have been a Christian for a while. The first word, one of the first words we learn as children is sorry. Whether it's a fault of our own, or whether we've done something terrible, or something terrible has happened to us, we say to God, I am sorry for living without you. I'm sorry for ignoring you. I'm sorry for the way that my life has unfolded through not only my sins, but also my mistakes. I feel bad. And I'm sorry for my part in it. And after saying sorry, we learn to say the word please. Please come into my life. Please transform me as you promise. Please help me. Help me change from the life I've lived or the sufferings I've suffered. Please come into my life. And then the third word is thank you. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for coming for me. Thank you. I believe all of these things. I thank you for being you. And we express that thank you by worship. And what we mean by worship is pouring out your heart and saying, I love you. I worship you. You are worthy of praise. You are my Creator. And you are my God. This is how, when people ask me, how do I become a Christian? I want to be a Christian. I just simply share that with them. And then I say, do you want to tell God these same things? And they say yes. And sometimes I'll lead them in a prayer of that very simple combination of sorry, please, and thank you. Because a person who is a Christian is the one who tells God what they really feel, what they really think of who He is, and invite Him into their lives. His mercy, His goodness, and His grace. And frankly, even for those of us who are Christians for a long time, these are the same words we continue to pray. It's not like we've progressed that far. We progress deeper into our understanding of the depths of our sin or neglect or betrayal. We still need forgiveness. We still need transformation. And so we continue throughout the Christian life to confess and say, sorry, please, and thank you. So the invitation is this: that when Jesus comes into Jerusalem, He comes as King. But within the week, they ask for Him to be crucified. Judas himself, who shared at this very table with Him, betrays Him. His friends, His disciples, they fall asleep. And when the temple guards come, they abandon Him and they betray Him in that way. Peter, one of His closest friends out of the disciples, denies that he even knows Jesus. He swears, I have nothing to do with Jesus. And yet, after His death and resurrection, He comes back to these same people. Judas accepted, because Judas ends himself. But even to Peter, He says to Peter, do you love me? Despite all your betrayal, despite your denial. You see, this is what Lent is about. This is why we arrive at Palm Sunday, which seems to be this great celebration, and it is. But it is also a reality check. How much do we really believe in the gospel and its power to transform us from the inside out? You see, it just starts in ripples. That if you are able to live in a manner that is a blessing and a light to your friends, or even to your family, to those who are closest to you, or even to yourself. And it's quite honest, we say we have learned very dark stories about ourselves, very negative ones, that we are unloved, that we need to perform, that the world does not notice us, doesn't care about us unless we can produce something for someone else. But what if we are a different community, a different society? The church stands for those who do not exploit one another, who do not look at people as commodities, and see all life and all people as beloved. Is that not the gospel? And is it not counter even to some of the stories we've believed and have been told about ourselves, even within sometimes the church setting? One of the reasons why our church runs the way it does, why we do the things that we do, is that we embody what we believe. When you come here every Sunday, it doesn't mean nothing. It's not, I hope, just, something that has become a habit. But when you come here, you come to worship. One of the reasons why I encourage people to arrive on time is because of the songs that we sing at the beginning. It is an act of worship to arrive. It is an act of sacrifice. Yes, I know we're towing 3 kids or something like this, and they're all crying, or they're not happy, or they're hungry, and I'm hungry because I haven't eaten anything or hadn't had my first coffee. But for all of us, when you actually arrive, even if you're not on time, even if you're just here, it means something. It means a lot. God is not here to judge us by a timetable, but it is about something more. And what we do here is meaningful. The way that we sing our songs, those are actually prayers. The way that we read our prayers, those instruct our hearts. And when we have this conversation, when we have what we call sermons or homilies or whatever, people tell me that our church is a little bit different. Because I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to tell you a transforming story, to reinforce this counterculture, this alternative to the way the world deforms us, even in beautiful ways in which our world deforms us and leads us astray. I remind you that there is grace and there is truth, all told in love. And at the end of all our services, we lead to one point. We lead to this table, this bread, this cup. This embodies what we truly believe, that Christ is with us and that He is in us, that He welcomes us. He eats with us. He sits down with us. He calls us by our name. We serve then one another as well, as an extension of our allegiance with Him, our friendship with Him. And we become friends with one another. My hope is that you will be able to engage beyond just the service itself. We are meant to live in each other's lives, to love one another, to know one another. Whether you're sharing your email or whether you join a small group, those are the things that bind us together, in which we share our stories, even our brokenness. And we find health in the telling of our story and finding that there isn't judgment, but there is compassion, there's understanding, and there is forgiveness. There is life at this table. And so I'm going to invite Evelyn to sing a couple of songs for us and prepare us as we consider and think about these things. The reason why someone would go to South Asia, the reason why you might give a palm cross to a friend or family member, is because we tell a story that transforms not just our culture, but our world.